Hello, everyone. In today's video, we're going to be continuing our series on the wonderful airports of Connecticut. So this episode is going to be dedicated to be doing all the towered airports with the exception of Bradley International, which is the big one, which I'm going to reserve for kind of its own one. Instead, what we're going to do is concentrate on all these other ones that have Class Delta airspaces that we can utilize, as well as some of the different places that have been. So the first place that we're going to be starting off on our journey here is going to be none other than Groton-New London Airport. This is Kilo Golf Oscar November. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this particular location, this is an absolutely cool little airport that's located on the edge. One of the reasons that I always thought this airport was neat was because way back in my working at the Air Museum days, we used to do a really neat scout program. And what we do inside of the scout program is we'd actually have students basically fly from Groton up to Hartford. And this is such a great place to basically take off from because it's basically on the far southeast corner of Connecticut and acts as a really good spot. One of the wild parts about this particular field, by the way, in case you're curious, is the fact that it's actually a fairly long runway. They were actually discussing extending it so they could start getting proper airliners in here later on. Another really nice thing they have is their fixed-based operator. That's their little FBO, for those of you who like to go stop here for your signature, has a really good iced coffee machine. Now, I know that doesn't sound like it's one of those things where like, oh, why would you fly special to Groton just so you could get iced coffee? Well, you don't understand how it can be when you're a crew of an aircraft, especially a charter plane, and you really could go for a good cup of mocha sort of a thing like that. Now, believe it or not, as we'll see here, you'll see most of the runways and airports that we have that are towered are all in line with each other. As a matter of fact, if I were to just take this nose and we keep going this direction, we'd hit most of the airports in Connecticut that all kind of feature the details that we're looking at in our particular journey here today. Other really cool things about Groton, of course, for those of you who are unfamiliar with our lovely state of Connecticut here, is the Groton subbase is right there. So if you want to get some really big time yelled at, feel free to fly right over things like, the Virginia-class submarines, an electric boat, and the nuclear power plant. I'm sure they're going to love all of that shenanigans that you're doing literally right off of my right wing here. So it's just kind of a neat thing that a lot of times they'll bring employees and stuff, all those locations, into this place through Groton. So our next location, of course, is a little bit further down here to the west. Our next airport that we're going to be taking a look at here is a little up the coast to the west, and this is New Haven, Kilo Hotel Victor November. Now, this is a pretty cool airport, and there's actually some interesting history going on for this one, in that they actually started offering commercial flights out of it. Now, of course, you're sitting here saying, commercial flights out of a runway this small? What's the idea there? Well, believe it or not, I've been flown on one of these, and a little teeny tiny building here is the terminal. That's it. Now, you're probably sitting here, they're probably flying, some not Learjets, but Bombardiers or something like that. No, they're actually flying 737s out of this airport. And what I mean, it is a tiny runway. I am not kidding. One of the fun experiences that I had here, other than flying out of here in commercial, is when we came into land back a little bit later on, coming back from a little adventure there. It was a neat thing where I basically told the person I was flying with, my wife at the time, just so you know, they're going to have to do a very aggressive deceleration to keep us on the runway so they don't go crashing or something like that. So she's like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, they're going to use a short field procedure, and it's going to be pretty intense. So she said, okay, cool. So, everybody tighten their buckles and everything. We're going to do a low approach, by the way. And we came down to land this plane, and I kid you not, they hit those brakes and reversers so hard that every single thing in the airplane went bang, as anything that was remotely loose instantaneously and basically backed itself into itself inside of the actual, luggage compartments above our heads. There were like little Skittles and stuff that people were eating, and they just went flying to the front. It was incredible how aggressive that braking force of that airplane can be when you're into situations where you need to stop the plane in a hurry. So again, this is a Kilo Hotel Victor November. It's a neat little airplane, a runway, I should say. And the neat thing, if you want to try it, try taking off a 737 from runway 2 there. It gets a little tight. But again, that's part of the fun, as they say. So our next airport is going to be a little bit further down the coast. And that's going to be right here. This is Bridgeport. This is Kilo Bravo Delta Romeo. Now, this airport I don't actually have a lot of history with. Many of the airports, I like to joke, there's only 30 airports in Connecticut, so it makes it pretty easy to hit them all. This is actually one of the few that I have not landed at personally. This is just one of those that we use for instrument approach training and things like that. Cool thing here is we're right over Bridgeport, which is getting a little bit close to New York. How can you tell? The sprawl. And you can basically see that right over the nose there as, you start seeing the number of buildings per, square mile spikes just for the sheer number of things. Now, another cool thing with Bridgeport here, and why I like it as a waypoint, is Long Island is right over there in the distance. So you can actually see the ferry, which is cutting itself across right now, and that's one of the common ways to sort of cross over. The other neat piece about Bridgeport, of course, is we're home of Sikorsky, which is, yes, that's Sikorsky. So you have a lot of the Black Hawk helicopters, when they're doing the little training exercises or the moving executives in and out. You'll see quite a bit of that kind of coming in and out of this particular region here. There's a little bit, I think there's a couple commercial airliners that actually fly through this particular airport at this time. But at this point, like I said, I don't have a lot of personal experience with it. There are some good instrument procedures here if you're looking for kind of brushing up on your instrument work. And the runways are huge, so you'll never have a shortage of finding what you need to do to be able to safely land your aircraft, kind of a thing like that. Nice. Whoa! Be careful with time acceleration. It's a cruel mistress. Now, the next one is going to be a little bit further inland. The next airport on our little shindig here is going to be Danbury. This is Kilo Delta X-Ray Romeo. Now, this airport, oh my gosh, how to describe this airport? Well, I think one of my former flight instructors said it was a toilet bowl. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Well, if you take a close look here, you'll notice the fact that I'm approaching to a landing here, and I can't see the control tower. In the real world, the control tower is quite a bit shorter than what you see over there on the left, poking out of the trees. And this is a valid approach. This is an approach that follows a highway that goes between two mountains. It's in a valley, which, again, normally they don't use this particular runway if they don't have to, because of, you can definitely guess what this is like at nighttime kind of a thing. But this airport is tiny runways, and you have to drop out of the sky. I think every single one of them features a displaced threshold, making your approaches much, much more dramatic than usually people hope for when they're trying to land an airplane. It's just kind of one of those things don't look forward to it, so to speak. This place used to have a pretty cool restaurant ages and ages and ages ago, kind of a thing. And they also have a very, very complicated taxiing system. I'm not going to go look at it from where we are, but just know that if you do try to set this plane down to the left here, crossing from east to west, you're going to have a really, really fun time basically trying to get through all the taxiways and not get like your Uniform 19s and Sierra 3s. And you can see how many of them just blew through, how complicated it is. Even though the runways and airport is literally this small, it doesn't need to be that complicated. So this is Danbury. I've been here a few times. I don't love it because, again, you saw that really, really cool approach there. If you're looking for a unique approach, though, I don't think anything else in Connecticut has anything that comes close to that I know of. So at least that part is pretty cool. But other than that, generally this is one of the ones I steer clear. Our next airport is going to be Waterbury-Oxford. This is Kilo Oscar X-Ray Charlie. This is in Waterbury, Connecticut. Well, not really Waterbury, Connecticut. It's close to Waterbury, Connecticut. Now, this is a pretty cool airport for a couple different reasons. This is one of those places that everybody likes to fly down to so they don't have to deal with Hartford traffic. The nice thing is this is not far. This is about 20 miles away from Hartford, which is not a long flight. It only takes like 10, 15 minutes to cover that distance typically, which makes it relatively easy to get to and back from. But the nice thing here is this place is just quiet. There's usually not a lot of airplanes coming in and out of here, and it's a very, very high visibility runway. I'm going to kind of sit out the window. Kind of hard to see based on my seating position. I had to take the Diamond today, right? You can see me basically spending the whole time fitzing with it. We're actually high right now. Now, one of the cool things about this particular runway is the fact that you are a bit of an elevation here. You probably notice I'm getting pretty close to the ground. I just crossed 1,000 feet there. The other neat thing, too, is if you can take a look at the runway very carefully, you'll notice it's got a bit of an uphill-downhill thing going with it, and that just makes it fun. We're also up on a plateau here. So, of course, if you have an engine out or something like that, there's going to be nowhere to go but down. And, of course, you're going to end up going right off the end of the runway. And this side of the runway is not nearly as dramatic. Now, what I used to use this runway for is nighttime, because nobody would be here in the universe at, 9 o'clock at night. So you could come down here and not be afraid of basically annoying the neighbors, so to speak, because you could just burp, 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 just like that, kind of a thing like that, and enjoy your little flights in and out of this region. So this is a pretty nice airport, and still kind of western Connecticut, western central Connecticut. Now, the next one, which will be our final airport that we're visiting, a little special for me. Now, you'll see why. The final one, which of course is to me the most interesting one, is Hartford-Brainerd Airport. So this is in central Connecticut. This is the last airport. We've actually seen all of the towered airports except for Bradley here in this video, just to give you an idea of how few there are in our lovely state here. But the reason this one has a special place in my heart is, of course, this is the one where I received my pilot's little certification there. I got my private pilot single engine land, and this was the spot. And my final landing was actually on 2-0, which is on the other side here. Popped the thing on the ground. I thought I'd failed the check ride. The guy was just giving me like staring daggers the entire time, like just making fun of my tag. Oh my God. That was a fun time, by the way. But the interesting thing we have here with this airport is we have this nice long runway 220 here, and usually you take off from 2. Occasionally it's 20, not very often, kind of a thing like that. But we have a lot of fun problems here. For one, you have the poopy plant, which is right there. You can't see it. They actually cut those trees down, by the way, at the end of the runway. Those are gone now. But that's where the waste treatment facility is, and it creates nothing but turbulence. Next problem we have, of course, we have this lovely Connecticut River, which doesn't have a lot of coverage from trees, so we tend to get bounced around pretty bad because of all the turbulence that comes off of that from the wind. We have bird problems because you have issues where, like, you can see this lovely little park and this little dike that you have to fly over to get the thing down on the ground. So you constantly have birds that are trying to run you down. I've had to basically go around because of birds. Like, I don't go around very often in the real world if I don't have to. I always go around if I have to, obviously. But believe it or not, my favorite reason to go around so far is because there are too many birds on the runway. So they had to run out a pickup truck with a bunch of flashing lights and sirens to chase all the birds off of the runway itself. And even after that, we still had to use the other runway, which is the one behind us. Now, this runway here is about 4,400 feet long, which is a good length. I've tried to experiment getting 737s and stuff in here. It can be done. It doesn't mean you should do it. Another neat thing about Brainerd, of course, is if you look really carefully, there is, yeah, that's exactly what you think it is. That is a DC-3. So this is actually a custom little outfit that they did for this particular airport, and I actually paid the $5 for it when it was on sale. You can see it's a Black Hawk. The FBI, by the way, are right there in that building. That's probably their airplane, and they always have a special call sign so people can't identify them in the air and everything like that. But this is the airport where I spend most of my time. Vast majority, if you look at my flight book, I start at Hartford, I end at Hartford, and actually where I fly out from is right there next to that hangar that's located. You can see there where all those buildings are. My airplane's not parked. Not that I own a plane. I just rent everything from a nice little flight club nearby. Now, another cool thing about Hartford-Brainerd here, other than the fact it has a tower, there are 3 controllers, by the way. And there's one controller who's done this way too long, who's awesome. There's one controller who's, I've got business. We're landing airplanes here. And then we have a chap who came up from Bradley, who very, 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 very by the book, which is awesome for people who are trying to learn because they will make sure you get it correct. So it's kind of one of those things. But one thing I would like to share, though, is why we're here, this is kind of getting towards the end of our video, is how small the crosswind runway is. Now, when it comes to planes, there's 3 that I typically fly. There's an Archer 3, and there's a Mooney 20, and of course, there's a Cessna 182P. And now, the 182P and the Mooney, I have no problem ever landing on this crosswind runway that you have here. But the Archer is one of the few planes where I actually don't feel good enough as a pilot to do it safely. Like, even though I know I'll be able to do it, and I know I'll be fine, and I can do the math, but there's just something about the length of this runway in the last couple feet of the approach that is absolutely terrifying in an Archer. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate that for you as we're coming in here like a helicopter. We're coming in at Archer speeds in a Diamond 62 here. That's probably not a good idea. Ugh. So first of all, those trees are a lot taller in the real world, so you would not be able to see the end of the runway here. But this is what you have to do. You have to cross these trees. I'll go ahead and look at them so you can see them. Get over the trees, then you have to cut the power, and you got to just dive for the runway. Ready? Dive for the runway. So then you come down here like this. Keep in mind that's a displaced threshold. And then you have to plop us on this runway like this. Look at that. Oh, man. I think it was funny. One of the times I landed a 182 here because of the bird incident that my legs came down. And they said, I think it needed like 1,100 feet or something over the 50-foot obstacle. I landed like maybe 2 lines in. It was like 750 feet. It was just how incredibly short. I basically almost landed on the other runways, how close I came to it. And I just remember pulling off this runway, the taxiway. My legs are shaking because I was so terrified because I thought I was going to die because of those stupid birds. And then I had passengers who, of course, didn't notice anything. And I taxi here, and I'm sitting here going, where the heck am I? And I started looking around going, what taxiway even is this? And I probably wasn't even supposed to be on the taxiway. And then I remember calling up tower, Delta Victor, I think? And then he's like, oh, yeah, proceed direct via this. And I'm like, it's new. It's different. What do I do? And it's just kind of one of those interesting incidents there that I always will think of when it comes to Hartford. So Hartford, really, really cool little airport, centrally located, good instrument procedures, unless you're coming from the north, in which case, good luck. But it's really, really neat airport. So that concludes our second video in this series. This is dedicated to all the towered airports. Our next video is going to be dealing with Bradley, which of course is its own beast because it has Bravo airspace, which makes it awesome. Charlie airspace, I'm sorry. We have no Bravos in Connecticut. Who am I joking? And of course, we'll take a look at some grass fields, of which there are some, predominantly in Western Connecticut. Enjoy.